Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our weekly Bible study. I'm very excited to kick off. There's a lot of things I want to cover today. I don't know if we'll get to everything. If we don't, there will be some things that I will just skip over and you can do your own study on that. So we're starting today with Exodus or Shemot, which means the names. And on the screen, you'll see displayed the Haftarah that you can read that's connected to this week's Torah portion. Okay, so let's get started. So I just quickly want to recap. This is my short version of what is happening. This Torah portion has 6 chapters and it's absolutely impossible to cover everything. I really had to narrow it down, and I still think that there might be some things that we won't get to. But first of all, the first chapter has to do with the names of the descendants of Jacob that went into Egypt and where they are now and who are their descendants. The next chapter is Moses' birth, his fight from Egypt, his fight in Egypt, his flight from Egypt, and then he freezes for a while then with Yethro's flocks and gets a wife there and has children. And God hears the cries of the people in Israel. The next chapter is the burning bush, and this is where we will spend the majority of our time for this session. So in chapter 3 and 4 mostly. So what we're going to be looking at is before the burning bush, during the burning bush, and after the burning bush. And we're going to do that in a menorah or a chiasm pattern, like Alzan taught you last week with building on that. Then chapter 4 is the rejection of the people, the start of miracles. The first miracle that we see is the burning bush. And then the 2 brothers arising, namely Moses and Aaron. Then we do chapter 5 is Pharaoh's introduced to God's plan, and chapter 6 is the judgments, and then we have names again. So we start off this chapter with names, and in chapter 6 there's a whole list of names again, and that's also a chiasm, right, that you can form. And then the reassurance of God to Moses and Aaron that he will be with them the whole time. So let's get started. I think it's very important that we just mention again, whenever we're looking at a chiasm or a menorah pattern like this, the central point, always everything around it, so the 6 candles you have, the 3 on the one side and the 3 on the other side, will always connect back to the middle. And so what we are trying to do, our goal, our focus in life, is always to be more like Yeshua. We want to be like our Messiah, the Savior. And so that will be the central focus. We will only come back to this idea at the very end. So the first question I want to ask you is, who are you in Yeshua? I listened many years ago to a teaching of Jim Staley. It's called Identity Crisis, and we as believers in God sometimes are very confused about our identity. Am I the person I'm born, or am I the person that God wants me to be? And recently, Hulisa Alwine are doing all of these follow-up teachings on the footsteps of Messiah. They're very good. They're on YouTube. You can go have a look at them. And she speaks about what do you identify as a purpose? Do you firstly identify as an American, or as a South African, or Puerto Rican, or whatever? What do you identify as? And if your nationality comes before your belief in God, then you have an identity crisis. And so we're going to answer this question: who are we? Who was Moses? And what does that apply to us today? Okay, so we're first going to start off with, ever thought why God chose Moses? And if Moses was chosen, why did God want to kill him? I think in chapter 4, God tries to kill Moses. Why? God chose him, and then why is God now trying to kill him? So the question is, do you sometimes feel like that? Do you sometimes feel that you have a calling, or God has called you to do something, whether it is serving, whether it's just being kind, but as soon as you choose to follow what God has for you, it feels like all hell breaks loose in your life. And have you ever wondered why? Why does this happen? And so the answer to this question starts with another chiasm, okay? And so we're going to look at a menorah pattern, and we're going to do many of these. You guys, there are so many. I cannot even tell you how many I had to leave out of this teaching. This Torah portion is filled with chiasms and menorah patterns. And if you have the time, go study them yourself. But what the main question we are asking is, Pharaoh wanted to kill Moses. and God wanted to kill Moses. Why? Why do we have these two events? And in the middle of that chiasm, you have this miracle of the burning bush. So before the burning bush, you have Pharaoh wanting to kill Moses. He flees, lives with Jethro, gets Zipporah as a wife, gets some kids. You have the burning bush. And then after the burning bush, God sends him on this journey. And on the way back to Egypt, God says, oh, Moses, I'm going to kill you now. And so what is that all about? And what does the burning bush have to do with it? So this Torah portion is filled with chiasms and mirror images. Like I said earlier, God versus Pharaoh wanting to kill Moses. You can see this image of both are two kings. The one is the king of the heavens. One is the king physically on earth. And so we're first going to look at why did Pharaoh want to kill Moses? And many people think it's because he killed the Egyptian guy, and it's not. I listened to some of Aleph Beta's teachings on it, and they really helped me to look deeper into this. So let's read this portion in Exodus 2, verses 11 to 15, on Pharaoh seeking to kill Moses. So one day when Mose was a grown man, he went out to visit his kinsmen. Who's his kinsmen? The Hebrew people. And he watched them struggling at the forced labor. He saw an Egyptian strike a Hebrew, one of his kinsmen. He looked this way and that way, and when he saw that no one was around, he killed the Egyptian and hid his body in the sand. The next day he went out and saw two Hebrew men fighting with each other. To the one in the wrong, he said, "Why are you hitting your companion?" He retorted, "Who appointed you ruler and judge over us? Do you intend to kill me the way you killed the Egyptian?" Moshe became frightened. Clearly, he thought, the matter has become known. When Pharaoh heard of it, he tried to have Moses put to death, but Moses fled, and Pharaoh fled to live in the land of Midian, which is where Jethro lives. So we see here that actually the real problem was not killing the Egyptian man. Moses thought it was. But as we go on, you'll see that's actually not why Pharaoh wanted to kill Moses. Okay, so why did Pharaoh want to kill Moses? Because of the Hebrew man's statement and comment that he made, saying, "Who appointed you judge over us? Who made you the judge of this kingdom? Who made you the ruler of this kingdom?" Because the last say always fell with Pharaoh. And so we see that it's not a case of killing an Egyptian man. It's that Moses appointed himself into a placement of king and judge over the kingdom. And Pharaoh did not like that. And that's why Pharaoh wanted to kill him. So the next question we need to ask is then, why does God want to kill Moses? If this is the menorah pattern, what's on the other side? And in order for us to really get to that answer, we're only going to get to it at the very end. So we're going to put this a bit on pause, and we're going to look deeper into, in order to understand this, we need to look farther down the story. Okay, so we come to the next chiasm, which is the burning bush, right? So I said all of this. So Pharaoh wanting to kill Moses, and Moses intervening between the fight between the Hebrew man and the Egyptian man, and the two Hebrew men, is all before the burning bush. But he then flees, he goes to Jethro, and there in that little piece that I'm skipping now, so many chiasms, you can go look up on it. But as he's at this burning bush, what happens, and thereafter what mirrors what happened before it? Okay, so the burning bush, if you think about it, this is the first miracle in Moses' story that's physical and apparent to him. And I'm sure that, I'm not being arrogant, but the rabbis also say it's not the best of miracles that could have been performed. You know, if you think of God opening the sea and putting a wall of water and having them walk on dry land, that's quite an amazing miracle. And you know, so and all of the plagues and how Israel was saved, those are amazing miracles. But why on earth did God choose this burning bush miracle to happen, and what did it actually mean? So the burning bush, Moses immediately understood what it meant. He immediately understood what it means. So if you, in Hebrew culture and in their understanding of things, trees have always represented mankind. If you read of any tree in the Bible, see that tree as a people or as a person. And so Moses was looking at this bush, seeing it was burning, and realizing that it's not burning. And he immediately understood what it meant. It meant that the tree, the people, is on fire. So if the bush is representative of us as people, what does the fire represent? And the fire in this instance, Moses immediately understood, was the slavery and the hardship of his people. So the bush was the Hebrew people, and the fire that is really burning it and causing distraught and discomfort was slavery that was imposed on them by Pharaoh. So why did God save Israel in the first place? Why break all of these rules of nature just for one group of people? God did, however, create everyone, so all of us that are alive are his children. And we see that God went out of his way to say, but not this group of people, I will be with you. And why did he do that? And that's, of course, because of the covenant that God made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so we see that this bush is on fire, and God is saying, my people is suffering, my people are on fire. And usually when you see a bush that's on fire, that bush is going to die. It's not going to survive, it will never grow again. And so this bush is not burning. It's burning, but it's not dying. And the only reason for that is a covenant that God made with the forefathers of this bush. And so the burning bush and this whole thing of it not dying goes back to the covenant. But what does the covenant actually promise, right? The covenant promises Abraham that you will become a big nation. I will always be with you, and you will never die out. And I will be your shield. I will be your protector. And so the covenant does not promise us more than immortality. And it doesn't mean I will live forever. It just means that this specific group of people will not die out. It does not guarantee that there will be no suffering. It does not guarantee that there will be no hardship and pain. It just means that this covenant makes the group as a whole indestructible. And I just want to pause here for a moment and leave Moses' story and think of the incredible privilege that we as Gentiles have being grafted into this specific tree. Where God says, if you are grafted in, if you choose to be a part of me, I will be a part of you, and you will be indestructible. And even if every nation in the world tries to kill you out, it will not happen. You will survive, and my word will survive, and my covenant will survive, and it will stand forever. And so God understands that there's this bush, and it is on fire, and it is in pain, and it is indestructible, because he made a promise. And so even though the fire is there and it's hurting and it's burning, it's not dying out, because God promised that it will not happen. And I think many times when we go through difficult times, in that moment of the burning and the suffering and the pain and the hardship, we ask, why are you allowing this, God? And that's the wrong thing to ask. God never promised that those things won't happen. And so rather switch your focus and say, Father, I'm so grateful that it doesn't matter what is happening to me now. I'm indestructible through the covenant that you made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I'm grafted into that covenant. And I will hold firm. I will stand fast, because I know I will not be destroyed. And so the burning bush, so Moses sees this bush. It's clearly on fire, but it's not burning up. So the chiasm on the other side of the bush, so this is everything leading up to the burning of the bush and the burning bush itself. So Moses is intrigued by this thing that he's seeing. So he wants to go closer and see. And he does that, and God speaks to him. And then after the burning bush, the first thing he says is, I want to go see if my people are okay, my brothers are okay. Because he clearly understood what God is saying. Even though the bush is not burning up, it's not pleasant, it's heat, it's warm, and it's troublesome. And so he's wondering, are my people still alive? Are they okay? And so understanding the representation of the bush and the fire, immediately you can see afterwards, after the bush, he immediately says, I want to go see if my people are okay. And so he immediately understands what the bush and the fire represented. So we go to Exodus 3. Now Moses was tending the sheep of Yethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, leading the flock to the far side of the desert. He came to the mountain of God, to Horeb. The angel of Adonai appeared to him in a fire blazing from the middle of the bush. He looked and saw that although the bush was flaming with fire, yet the bush was not being burned up. Moses said, I'm going to go over and see this amazing sight and find out why the bush isn't being burned up. And so this is another chiasm. It's going to be a chiasm that makes use of the words that are used before the burning bush and directly after the burning bush. And so the why is the word that we are going to be looking at. So in the Strong's, the number is 4069, and it's Medua. And it literally means why, how come, wherefore. So it's a question, it's uncertainty, it's unaware of what is going on. And so when you look at it, it's challenging something. Why is this happening? And I just think, how many times have we asked that? Why is this happening? Why have I been put through this? Why am I experiencing all of these things when I am only trying to serve God? Okay, so let's look at this word. It's spelled Mem Dalet Ayin. So why is the bush burning? Medua, Mem Dalet Ayin. So after the burning bush, Moses left, returned to Yethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, I beg you to let me go and return to my kinsmen in Egypt to see if they are still alive. So we are going to compare the word why with if they are still alive. And Yethro said to Moses, go in peace. And so when we look at the word of if they are still alive, it's in Hebrew, you can string many letters together and they can be a sentence. So the only word is odem. Okay, and the M is added in the way of speaking. It's not how you spell the word, but it's in the way that they speak that term. And so it means, are they still there, or everyone's still alive? Are they alive at all? You can pause at any time and read through this again. The usage is again more good, while, longer, else, since, yet, and still. And so we see Odem is spelled Ayin, Dalet, Mem. And so we see the word of why is the bush not burning and are they really still alive directly mirror each other. They are their own menorah pattern. And so we see they connect to each other. And whereas why is uncertainty, challenging. So before the burning bush, Moses was unsure. He was challenging an idea. He was unsure of what it meant. And after the burning bush, he had peace. He had acceptance. And so we see whenever we are unsure of ourselves, when we are unsure of who God is, who am I in God, and the fire comes and it starts burning the bush. Once we leave that place of being burned up, we have acceptance. We know who God is. We know better who we are. We know better who we are supposed to be. And so we see before the bush, Moses was in disbelief and oppositional, but after the bush, he was in acceptance. And so what does this fire represent again? Hardship. The next chiasm we're going to look at is also before and after the bush, and it comes from the same two passages. The second part is the angel says to Moses, don't come any closer and take off your sandals. Moses asks his father-in-law to let him go, and Yethro says, go in peace. So we're going to look at don't come any closer and let me go. And then we're going to look at take off your sandals and go in peace. So don't come any closer and take off your shoes. That's what the angel says to Moses, right? And the words we're going to look at is karab and halom. Karab halom means don't come any closer. It means this is dangerous. This is not, you don't play around, you don't mess around with it. Don't come any closer. It's dangerous. And take off your shoes is the word lom shal. So karab halom, lom shal. Okay, is what the word, exactly what the angel said to Moses. Be careful, take off your shoes. The mirror image of that is where Moses says, the angel says, don't come any closer. Moses says, please let me go. Okay, and he asks his father-in-law, will you please let me go from here, which lech is the word go. And he felt safe to do that. He knew he was sent on a mission. He felt safe. He felt secure in who he is. And Moses says, lech le shalom, go in peace. And if you think of the previous slide that we did, we said, take off your shoes is lom shal. And what is the mirror of lom shal? It's shalom. And everyone knows when you say go in peace, it means go in shalom. And so we see these two chiasms, that before the bush, before the burning, before your suffering, you feel you are in danger. You don't have that security, right? Danger means I'm insecure. I don't have security. I don't have guarantees. But after God has come and tested you and you stood through that fire, right, you will be safe to let go. Okay, and beforehand, you need to take off your shoes. You need to humble yourself. But after that, after your burning, after your suffering, God says that there will be, from lom shal, there will be shalom. And so another quick chiasm that I want to bring out from this teaching is that if you have this central focus, which is the burning bush, we see in the beginning, there's a death threat. The two Hebrew men are fighting, and the one asks him, Moses, are you going to kill me like the other person? And then after the burning bush, God says to Moses, when we're done here, you're going to go to Pharaoh, you're going to tell him, if he doesn't let my people go, I'm going to kill him. And so we see two death threats. The next thing is when he asks him, will you kill me? And or will you kill me also like you killed him? So sorry, the first one was, I made a mistake. The first one was Moses killing the Egyptian and the death threat, right? The next one is, will you kill me? And then God says to Moses, I will kill you. And then Pharaoh seeks to kill Moses, and God seeks to kill Moses, and you have this burning bush in the middle of all of these things. So if we want to know why God wants to kill Moses, we need to understand why Pharaoh wanted to kill Moses. And I know it's because of him going into a place of authority, but there's something deeper here. There's something richer that we still need to understand. So because of the verbal death threat that Moses had no right to issue, where the guy said, will you also kill me? That guy felt that Moses was threatening him to kill him the same way he killed the Egyptian. And he had no authority to do that. Now, how do we know that, except for him not being Pharaoh, right? How do we know that Moses didn't have the authority to do that? And the Torah speaks of this. So God wants to kill Moses because Moses has no right to issue the death threat also to Pharaoh. Okay, why not? God has chosen him. God has appointed him. Why, even after that, does Moses not have the authority in God's kingdom to go and issue this death threat? The problem is, why did God tell him to issue it and then wants to kill him for wanting to issue it? You know, and you sort of think like, what is going on? God appoints this man and he puts him in this authority and he tells him, you need to go do this. And then God tries to kill him. Why does God do that? The problem is the secret to why Moses in the first place. Why not choose someone else? Why not choose any other Hebrew people and appoint them as an authority to go to Pharaoh? I mean, Moses is not even in Egypt. He's in Midian. Wouldn't it have been closer to choose a Hebrew guy already living in Egypt to go and speak to Pharaoh? Why choose someone that's living outside to then have to travel to do this? And so if we want to understand why God is acting the way God is acting, appointing someone and then trying to kill them, we need to understand that the story is about our Father, our King. And God is both our Father and he is our King. He is our King because he created us. And he's the judge and the jury that's appointed over this earth. He is a Father because he made a covenant with us. And he, making that covenant with us, became family. And he doesn't want his kids to die. He doesn't want his kids to be destroyed. And so the question is, in this specific story that we're looking at of Moses fleeing and then the burning bush and being sent back, in what capacity is God acting? Is he acting as God the Father, or is he acting as God the King? So what does God say? He says, go to Pharaoh and you tell him, let my child go. And if you do not, I will kill you. So in this specific instance, God is acting as God the Father because he wants his children to be saved. And so we see attributes of a king. A king is worried about rulership. He's worried about the kingdom. He's worried about the rules. But a father whose kid is in trouble will surpass the rules, even the rules of physics and nature that he himself as the king created. And so we see an incredible attribute of parents. I don't think there's any parent that I know that will not do anything and everything to save their children from hardship, from pain. And we see God is doing the same. God is saying, I'm willing to physically break the laws of nature and the rules I implemented to get you out of Egypt. So Avinu Malkeinu is the Hebrew word for our Father, our King. And we don't realize how complicated these words are. We just say it. We just say, oh, Father, our King, Avinu Malkeinu, and we think we understand what it means. But it's complicated. Because what if these two very complicated roles that God is playing as ruler and judge comes in conflict with God the Father and the Father's heart? What then? And so we see the Torah does speak about it. It does teach us what happens when Father and King comes into conflict of each other. What happens when righteousness and grace sort of bump heads, right? And it's called the Goel Hadam. So in Joshua, it speaks of the cities of refuge and the avenger of the blood. So Goel Adam means avenger of the blood. We have a slide telling us that a little bit later. The word Goel in conventional Hebrew means redeem, the redeemer, the family redeemer, or to avenge. Hadam is translated as blood, and it refers to that which is shed, meaning the cause of death. So the Goel Adam only can be instated in a sense of involuntary manslaughter. So killing someone by accident. So let's say that you kill someone by accident, and the Goel Hadam then has the right to come and kill you. Okay, so what did God say they must do? He said, put up cities of refuge so that the person who accidentally kills someone can run and be safe in that city, escaping the judicial system completely and being safe in that city. As long as that person is living in the city, the Goel Hadam cannot touch them. So the cities of refuge is the answer, right? God, we see, has this God the Father as a family member, giving him the right to be a Goel Hadam for us. But we also have the king that needs to rule and say, well, you didn't mean to kill this person. It was an accident. And when they come in conflict, God says the answer to that conflict is cities of refuge. So Moses could kill the Egyptian man because of the oppression that the Egyptian man brought upon the Hebrew man, because he is a brother. So Moses could kill the Egyptian guy because he was avenging his Hebrew brother. He was acting as a Goel Hadam. But when the two Hebrew men were fighting, Moses doesn't have the authority to really step in, because both brothers, or both of the men, are Moses's brothers. So he cannot act in that way of the Goel Hadam. He cannot act as a family member. He's acting as a king, and he wasn't allowed to do that. So it brings us back to then, why does God want to kill Moses? In order for us to understand this, we need to understand again, why did Pharaoh want to kill Moses? Moses could kill the Egyptian because of the oppression he brought on the Hebrew man, because he is a brother. But when the two Hebrew men were fighting, he had no right doing that. So Pharaoh wanted to kill Moses because he was acting like a judge and a king. And God wanted to kill Moses because he was not acting like a brother to the two Hebrew men, but as a king. And so God wants Moses to go free his brothers. And so God is asking him, Moses, are you a brother? Are you part of the family? Are you part of this covenant? And so what is the sign of the covenant? The sign of the covenant was circumcision. And so maybe you sometimes feel, God has set me on this course. I'm doing what he's asking me. Or why do I feel God is killing me with pain and suffering and misfortune? And maybe just asking you to do this thing is the heaviest thing you've ever had to do. And God maybe is placing all of these afflictions on you to ask you, are you a Jew or are you an Egyptian? With who are you standing? In what do you find your identity? On whose side are you? And so the amazing thing is what Zipporah did, is what she did is she made the decisions. She said, I'm going to make a statement and we will be a Hebrew family and we will be part of the brothers. And the moment that Zipporah made the statement to say, me and my house, we will serve the Lord. We will be part of the covenant. We will have the sign of the covenant. We will no longer have our identity crisis. There's no longer an identity conflict. God backs away and he says, all right, now you can go. Now you have the authority to do what I've set you out to do. And so the last question we need to ask ourselves is, why Moses? Why not some other guy? Why not someone else? And the reason for this is because Moses is like a double-edged sword. As they go through the seas, they're praising God. And can you imagine how God is feeling? God created the Egyptians. Yes, they're filled with sin. Yes, they're suppressing his people. But ultimately, God still created them. He is as much a father to them as he is to us. And we see that by allowing a multitude of nations to leave along with Israel. God has no pleasure or no joy in killing his own children. He loves the Hebrews and he loves the Egyptians. And so why did God choose Moses? Because Moses understood the conflict that God had within himself as father and as king. Because Moses had that same conflict. He had the conflict of being born Hebrew, but being raised in an Egyptian household. And it's only him that can truly in authority step up and represent God, and in that authority go and threaten Pharaoh and say, you do not let my people go, God will kill you. Because he understands the conflict that God had within himself. And the answer is, do you? Do you understand the conflict of being born a Gentile and now identifying with a nationality and with a faith and with a people that you were grafted into? And what does that mean for your authority? You know, we all have authority through Yeshua and through what he did. But in the end, you need to identify with the tree. You need to choose to be grafted into the tree. You need to become part of the tree. You need to be one with the tree in order for you to have the authority to stand up against the forces of darkness. And so some things that you can think about, Messiah was treated like an Egyptian, like you and me. Messiah was rejected. Messiah was cast out. Messiah was not seen as part of his Jewish brethren. They persecuted him, they judged him, and in the end, they killed him. And so we see that even in that time, Yeshua went to live in Egypt for a while, you know. And so I guess the question we need to ask ourselves is, who are you? Are you a Hebrew or are you an Egyptian? And do your actions reflect that? What does your actions reflect? Are you acting, walking, talking like a Hebrew person would? Or are you acting, walking, talking like an Egyptian person would? And if you are doing the latter, if you are acting and doing like the Egyptians, are you able to do what Zipporah did? Are you able to circumcise your ears and your heart and say, I want to be part of this covenant. I want to stand up in my authority and go on the mission that God has sent me on. And so do you take up God's cause? Do you take up what he wants? Let your will be done, Father, and not mine. Because that is what Yeshua did. Yeshua said, not my will, but the will of the Father. And so Yeshua took up, and if you think back on that menorah pattern, Yeshua was in the middle. And that's who we want to be. We want to take up that central point of being more like Messiah, of even though we are rejected, even though we are cast out, are you willing to circumcise yourself and stand up in the authority that God has given you? And I think something that's very interesting from this point out, you know, God never came to kill Moses again. That decision was made, and it was held throughout his 40 years in the wilderness. God, there was hardship for them as a people, and Moses got upset once or twice and brought some judgment on himself. But not, God never came to kill Moses, you know. And if you're feeling like you're dying under the pressure, maybe it's time to circumcise your heart and be more like Yeshua and say, not my will, but the will of the Father. I hope that you learned something in this session, and I hope that in listening to this, you understand that there will be a conflict inside of all of us, and it's our decision who we want to be and who we want to identify as. It's our time to make that choice. My mother always says that, you know, the time is drawing near where we will no longer have that choice to make so easily as we do now. I hope that your cups will be filled for the week to come. Shabbat Shalom and many blessings to you. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week.